last year, we were opening the last gift for my son Keegan's birthday. It was back in November, and it had no wrapping paper on it. It had a label that said, dropship from graveyardmall.com, Jim. Well, Jim is my father, my son's grandfather. And I'll have to give you a little background on Jim. He doesn't have much experience with children. I lived in Minnesota, he lived in California. We saw each other once, every year or two. And he lives in Las Vegas now, as we would call lost wages. In Las Vegas, the kids, there's not many kids. It seems like they seem to hide the children, kind of like Bulgaria. I don't know if you remember Bulgaria. Baron Bombburst from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang would send out the child catcher and round up all the children and lock them away. That kind of reminds me of Las Vegas. Where are all the children? So we start opening the box, and we pull out this wonderful little black and yellow bike. And it had 10-inch wheels on it, perfect size for my son Keegan. And as we look, start going through the box, there's no pedals. We start scratching our head. Is this Graveyard Mall for reject toys products? It kind of reminds me of the island of Misfit Toys.com. So we put this bike together. It didn't take very long because of the amount of parts that there were to assemble. Put it together, and I had to take my son, and I held the back of the seat and wheeled him around. And we have hardwood floors in our kitchen and dining room, so we have some room that he can, pedal around with this bike. And he starts, slightly putting his feet down, and eventually I kind of let him go on his own. But speaking of winter, I do want to tell you another story about my father. Is that as far as his gifts and what he tends to give, one time he gave me a picture that was supposed to be a soon-to-be famous artist when I was 10 years old. That was my Christmas gift. For a child, a picture that had a news clipping on the back really didn't mean a whole lot for me. And then there was another time when he sent me a gift, and it was a skateboard. He calls me up and asks me, how do you like your gift? And I said, well, it's snowing here in Minnesota, but I'll let you know in about 4 months when I have a chance to use it. So by getting this gift, a bike with no pedals, wasn't much of a surprise to me, saying this just isn't going to work. We're going to have problems. But what happened is, as my son started walking around, he would eventually start gliding. He'd pick one foot up, glide with another foot, glide with another foot. And by the end of after a couple of months, he was racing through our kitchen, our dining room, around our island, going around chairs, getting his feet up, turning with his feet up in the air. After a few dings and what have you in our cabinets. So in the spring, I took him out. He started riding his bike that he had last year with training wheels, and it had pedals. And he learned to pedal last year, going through all the motions and a few little crashes here and there. And I told him that I was going to take the training wheels off, and he was a little worried about that. But what happened is, within one day, he was able to at least take a few pedals and be able to turn and put his feet down. So what had happened is, this bike was actually a training bike. It wasn't supposed to have pedals. And by taking one part of the process of his balancing over the winter And the other part, and separating it where he only had to pedal the last spring, we put that together, and he was able to ride his bike by the time he was 3 1/2. And so that was very enriching for us to have that happen. So I would like to let you know that fellow Toastmasters and, well, no guests today, that is one of the keys to his success. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.